Hello everyone, thank you for joining us and welcome to another edition of In the Metal. As you know by now, hopefully, most weeks we are going around the world of independent watchmaking and discovering behind the scenes a little bit about the watches, the watchmakers, their inspirations, their techniques, and again, this week we are joined by a man whose brand, I believe, was one of the forerunners of the modern day of internet marketing, of recognizing the potential of the internet and leveraging that to really thrust his brand upon us right back in the first 10 years of the 21st century. So we're going to be doing that in 1 minute, but when I say we, that obviously means I am not doing it alone. And as ever, we are going across to the amazing Gun Barrel City in Texas to see Mr. Dan Spitz.
Hey, Johnny.
What's going on?
Looking good, my bro. Your hair's looking good, man. Everything's you're looking fresh, bro.
I am going to start a hair blog, man, because
looking good.
This thing is, if you could see it 10 minutes ago, it was out to here, man. It was fucking unreal.
Yeah. As opposed to me, I've had my head inside of all kinds of machines and stuff. So I'm the opposite of you.
I think I would need a machine at this stage, for what's going on here. We have a dog, and he's going to the groomer tomorrow, and I was wondering, right, should I swap places with him because they would have the kind of hardware there that might be able to cope with it.
Yeah, they got the buzzers, man. I got a set of buzzers, man. I could buzz you up, no problem, man. I learned that when I was living on the road.
I would be right over after this show. So,
yeah, that's actually funny stuff on the road, questions that nobody ever asked. And so we interview other people on this show, and it's always the weird, cool, off-the-wall questions that are really cool, right? Same thing used to happen to me when I was on the road, because when you're interviewed all day long, every day in rock and roll, it's pretty much the same questions till some freak comes along, like me or you. And that's a question that I wish people would ask, like, who cuts your hair? Because we don't trust no one, and we're never home. It's never the same person that you would get used to and not trust anybody else on planet Earth, right? So we all in a hotel room. We're usually one of the roadies or somebody. They got buzzers and clippers, and they're like, "Who's next? Who's the next victim here?" Because we have long hair. The guys that could have long hair, right? And back then in the 80s and 90s, we'd have to trust some dude to cut my hair.
I'm going after your late 80s look, so I am, man, at the minute. So that's up where I'm heading at the minute, So, listen, we have a fantastic guest on again, once again, Dan.
Yes, we do.
Another fantastic guest. And so I know that this time that it's the owner and the driving force behind a brand. As I said in the introduction, I believe one of the pioneers of exploiting the internet to level the playing field for independence in among the pond along with the big fish, and without a doubt.
But I think if we really do think back, we're always mentioning some of the crazies, but the beginning of independent watchmaking, the shape of the watch case, of what came out of, and the story that went along with it, like you said, utilizing the internet to tell your story for the first time. Like, you can tell your story of what you believe and what you went through to become an independent, to put something out back then was almost unheard of, and so this guy, he made an impact.
Let's find out more. We are welcoming to In the Metal tonight the frontman of Linde Werdelin, Mr. Jørn Werdelin. Welcome.
Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, Danny. Good to hear you. Good to speak to you.
Thanks for coming on.
Already, well, thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. So on this, beautiful Thursday evening.
We greatly appreciate it. As I started to say, I remember way back when, and before we came on here, we always talk a little bit, just shooting the shit kind of thing with everybody. And I started to say, like, Jørn was asking me like, man, like what's all that ghost building you guys did back then? So we all always tell that story of me and my friends who were watchmakers, and we always ghost building back then because we really couldn't become independent watchmakers. We couldn't afford $10 million worth of machines back then at the birth of CNC as it came in. We couldn't afford brand new Chablins. It wasn't part of it. Even if you could afford one, you needed many, right? So it was beyond our reach. But somehow you're crazy. You pulled it off. And I remember seeing the case and like the ads, like the strength. It was immediate strength of that case. You took a risk, right? It wasn't a normal, traditional design to become out of the gate as an independent, but you had a wonderful story. So I think maybe, Johnny, we should just jump right in.
I'm with you on that, yeah.
Yeah, that was just like, we all know a little bit of the story, okay. But if you could tell us that leap of faith, man, not the usual stuff like, oh man, this was the idea, but that leap of faith. It was like we always tell our independents, try not to go to the bank, because you're tied to the bank. Try not to go to the dude who's smoking the cigar when you have your idea and he says, I got money for you, bro, because he ends up with 53% of the company somehow, some way in the end. So tell us just a little bit, behind the scenes, man, you got the idea, you're laying in bed, just sweating, and you're like, should I or shouldn't I? How did you go off the cliff, bro?
Well, yeah, no, I mean, I think there's a lot of truth in that. I mean, first of all, I would definitely agree that, quite a few have started out as, movement makers, watchmakers, and then become independent with a financial backer. And we certainly experienced very early on in in our days of our beginning development, etc. And a good old friend of mine who I respect a lot, he said to me, Jørn, you don't need money, you need time, and you need to work. And when he said that, he says like, well, I mean, that's not really true because we did need money. But I think looking back on almost 20 years of it, he was so right. Because sometimes I think the amount of money can be the reason that you fail. Because if you have sort of this, we got to spend this money on the product, on the marketing, on the people, etc., and you never constrain yourself, then at one point you hit sort of a bend in the road, and you got other people who are in control. And if they think, it's just not worth it, right? It's too much money. Let's not throw more money or time of it. Just forget about it. And then you end up, with no business. It's not your business, and there probably is no business. I mean, we've, I think, like most other independent brands, have had sort of, good times and bad times, and I think it takes 20, 30 years, if not more, to sort of kind of solidify and be a bit established in your sphere. But to answer your first question, how did we jump into this? I think it was just youth, exuberance, kind of innocence, ignorance. And just this, for both of us, and I'll speak for myself here, is that it was just, I was in my mid-30s, and I had worked, and I had worked hard, and I thought it was all right, but I was a bit tired of working for other people and solving other people's problems. And then when we started talking about this, I sort of felt that shit, this is going to be difficult. This is where my ambition meets my self-perceived talent, right? Where arrogance falls out the window.
There you go.
And I think that's very true. I said almost 20 years later, I'm humbled by it. And I mean that in the best possible sense. I have a lot of respect for the product that we make. I have a lot of respect for our customers. I have a lot of respect for, you know, the brands, and you know, I'll mention a brand, something like Rolex, right? When I started out, or when I was a child, and you know, I worked in my father's shops, where he was a watch and jewelry retailer, and you know, it goes back like many years.
Okay.
And at that time, because my dad didn't deal in Rolex, you know, I grew up that I didn't like Rolex, right? I liked other brands like Cartier and, you know, Satina, and you know, et cetera, et cetera. But when I started getting into and trying to understand, you know, behind the myth and behind the what you say, sort of the admiration for brands, looking at them from the outside, and trying to understand, you know, who does what here and why. You know, then I just started having this, you know, enormous respect for a brand such as Rolex. How the hell did they get there from 1903, you know, and 120 years later, right? And people love what they do everywhere. And how do you get to that, right? So and that's why, you know, as I say, I feel humbled.
Well, look, 20 years in, I'm going to ask you some different questions than you probably normally ever get asked, because you can help and leave a some historical words for younger watchmakers, younger independent watchmakers, because independent watchmaking is the forefront of watchmaking, not just now. We're in our third wave, I think, about now. I mean, even we had Jean-Claude Biver on a few weeks ago, who, I mean, he's the purveyor and overseer, Jedi Knight of watchmaking. You could see into the future. He's the only one. He's it. And he even said the same thing. You know, we don't know what's going to happen to the big brands because we really don't need time, right? So we are the artists, but you are the artists and the creator of a dream back then. Now we hear that you grew up in your dad's store, which is similar to me. It's my grandfather, and you worship the underdog. And that's kind of metal music, you know. It's like not the pop music, right? It's the thrash metal dudes, you know. It's the underdog with the kind of music that I help to facilitate and spread the disease to those who would be infected. So it's the same kind of thing in independent watchmaking. So we're going to get a lot of good information out of you to help people. So that underdog attitude was obviously infused in you, and you had admiration for Rolex, which you obviously knew, working in a store, that they started out buying movements from somebody else, right, and placing them and making cases and dials. That's done in independent watchmaking, right? So it helped you along to see, wait, man, there is a way, and that's really cool. You also understand. Your friend's really cool, by the way, who said, like, you know, just, you don't need money, but you said something interesting. You do need money. So we do need money, and that's why you see a lot of younger guys offering up nowadays a CAD drawing of a future product, right? Please help support independent watchmaking. Buy my first 3 watches or whatever it is. Fund me a little bit. I'll get this going. Have faith in me. It's not easy. How the hell did you do it, man? Because I remember seeing those first ads. Some of them weren't just on the internet. That you had to buy something. And to jumpstart this, a little bit old school, because we weren't totally in the internet revolution yet. But you, as Johnny was saying earlier, you were like one of the first that grabbed hold of that and understand what this generation, these younger generation of watchmakers already know. Like, they're not just watchmaking; they got to set up for video. They got to set up to take pictures. And it's not just their phone. Like, they're not messing around. They understand the power of what we have here. Instagram, Facebook, and so forth to brand themselves.
So, I mean, there's at least 3 parts of a watch business, probably of every business, right? It's the product, it's the creating the awareness, and then it's the the management, the team, the people involved in it, and you have to manage all 3, so very carefully and together. And I mean, as you know, the product is difficult enough in itself, and I think that, I mean, that's a very long discussion just on its own. And the people thing is kind of an obvious thing. I mean, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the marketing, what we felt at the beginning was that people said, "Oh, but you got to spend, you got to spend, you got to spend." And once we had tried a little bit of PR, paid PR, and print advertising back in 2007, I just realized if we have to do this, we will be broke before year end. and fortunately, that was right at the time when bloggers came around. Robert Jan Broer, Ben Clymer, Ariel Adams. I'm excluding 5 or 10 other people that were not excluding, but there were other people. And back when we started, they were not welcome, right? They were not welcomed by the journalists or by the fairs, etc., etc. And they were quite happy when we came to them and said, listen, we would like to be featured and we'd like to, help you a bit. And fast forward now, right? I mean, they're an integral part of the of our universe, and everything has been bridged. They are online, offline. They're journalists. They are bloggers. They are e-commerce purveyors, et cetera, et cetera. Right? And I guess that's just the development of our industry. But in some sense, we were lucky to say that we cannot afford this. So when I sat down with the team, I'm not even going to if anyone says print advertising, I'm not even going to answer the question, because it's always a no. So just exclude it from your thought process, and then think about what can we do then. And that was the bloggers and all the rest. And the social media came a lot later. That came in about 2013. Facebook came before, but that was not social media in the same way that Instagram. And Instagram was such a powerful tool when it arrived in 12 and 13. And our marketing strategy developed into like an Instagram strategy, which has then developed away from Instagram and actually away from what I would call the traditional social media to be a lot broader based. And maybe it's not even marketing anymore. Maybe it's more communicating with our client, our potential clients, and people who are interested in what we do, like what we're talking about right now. So it's sort of it's like a community. I've always felt a little bit, when do we go from being a community to being a brand? And that's a really hard question to answer, right? Because you go some of the the very big ones, right? They are obviously brands, and there's almost no story necessary anymore. Right? It is, if you sit with a very well-known watch brand on your wrist and you ask them, where does this brand come from? A lot of people will not be able to answer it, because that's not the point. But most people who wear a Linde Werdelin, will know, quite a bit about where we came from. What we're doing, how we're doing it, why we're doing it, et cetera, et cetera. So we're sort of right at the other scale where people are very interested. And obviously, I mean, let's say, Jørn, I mean, how do you sell a watch, right? Because nobody really knows about you, and to a large extent that is very true. But obviously, a few hundred people is good enough.
There you go. Right. And that's independent. And you recognize that early on. I just waited, and you hit it. And that is independence. That is in music what we started. The underground, right? It's cool to be underground, right? We don't care. We play to 500 people, man. Maybe we'll be big enough to play to 1,500 someday. But you know what? We're doing what we want. And there's a hunger for that when someone, they discover you. Hey, man, I was first. I found that. I found that Linde, man. I found him 20 years ago, man. I got one of the first ones, man. That's the cool part. It's really not branding. It's like they brand you.
Well, Linde,
I guess it's a bit sort of being a pioneer.
That's you.
It's not the right. It's not the right word. Sorry, what I wanted to add something to it, but okay, I forgot now. Johnny,
sorry. Going back to when Linde Werdelin, sorry, for the French. It
is French, or used to be at least. hundreds of years ago.
Right, okay. So
anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but whatever, Linde Werdelin sort of coincided with what we do with the watch press, what Sylvia and myself had done with the watch press back, and it was one of the first brands that we really covered. And I see the man who is everywhere, Miguel Sierra, saying that he was a traditional journalist and one of the first to believe in Linde Werdelin's concept. Yep. And so were we. And this gives me an opportunity to tell a little story, because we did some, if I'll say so myself, pretty out of the box writing on Linde Werdelin. We used a lot of images of the Lamborghini Aventador, for example, with the Spido light and the Spido speed came along. I remember we did a GIF of a radar screen with a green blip going around in it for the DLC version, and we all those images are gone, because we had a guy, a company in Edinburgh went and revamped our original website, and it just gives me a lovely opportunity to say fuck you very much, Organic Digital, for losing all those 600 images across 600 articles. So well done, guys. So, I'm in trouble now, aren't I? But no, we were writing about Linde Werdelin right at the start, and lots of articles, and we just really loved the whole the buzz that was coming out around it. So, and I can remember one of the things that really caught my eye initially was something called the Perfect Five.
Yeah,
I am a lover of animation. You know, and always have been, always have my nose. I used to have my nose stuck in Tintin books or in Judge Dredd or in something like that there, you know. And,
Judge Dredd, good choice.
Judge, I know you and Judge Dredd. I know you know that one. So with these fantastic escapist comic strip characters selling the story of Linde Werdelin, and it was like nothing else that I had ever seen. So this jumped out at me at the very start.
But that was the whole point of it, and right when we started, I was interviewing a woman, Mercedes, Spanish. For the position of doing our marketing or communication, and we sat there and she said, wouldn't it be fun to do a bande dessinée, as it's called in French, or graphic novel, or cartoon, and I was like, what? because you sort of have that sort of elevated luxury. It needs to be exclusive and very much within predestined form, etc. And I think that was why I just loved the idea. I said I mean, that's really something. If we do that, it'll either kill us completely, or we have something which is very unique. And the first time we exhibited in a hotel in Geneva, first time 2007. Nobody knew about us at all, and we had these banners in Geneva airport. We had bought some space, so when you came out, there was these banner hanging down with the graphic, etc. And people called us, not so much to buy watches, but to buy the banners.
Hey, whatever it takes, man.
But I think what was the thing about it is that people really loved it, and it was very divisive, because there were some people who thought, well, actually that's not really luxury, and it isn't this and it isn't that, but the thing is that it created a lot of awareness in its own right? Because we obviously, with Dominique Bertaille and some other people, worked very hard in creating some stories that were both fun and interesting and well drawn and well written, etc., etc. So that when we exhibited, people came to our stand to get, you know, part one of the story, part two, and part three, and so on. So I mean, you know, it is funny, right? We sit here more than a decade later, and you still remember it, and for me, it just says it had a huge impact on the perception, and maybe in, you know, in a positive way, and we see it sometimes. The MS, they have done, and I think still do it. You know, animation. Cartier has done it. So it's definitely not something just. But I think maybe in France, it's much more well respected, France and Belgium, than it is in, say, the northern part of Europe, where
Japan.
it's called a cartoon, right? And that's whereas in France it's called bande dessinée, and obviously just the word, it sounds, you know, different levels, right? And
but
in
Japan,
for children.
In Japan, it's you know, the primary way of reading. When you go on a subway in Japan, it's just, you see an 80-year-old guy reading big, thick books of comics.
Yeah,
and I grew up on comics. I mean, he mentioned Judge Dredd. Obviously, that was a comic guy. We wrote a song, Judge Dredd, that was #1 song. I mean, you know, so we're all comic book fans. But
do you remember the Katzenjammer Boys? That's an American one. You should look that up. That's a great one. Very old. In Danish, it's called Knot and Tot. But anyways, yeah.
No, you said something earlier that we someone told me once, as an artist and as a creator, because in music, when we were in the recording studio, especially, we in the old days, you had to have managers and people from the record company come down in their suits to give you a deadline, because in art, we're never done. We'll be in the studio spending record company money. Back then, it wasn't our own. It was our own. We just didn't realize it was our own. We had to pay it back, but we didn't realize we had to pay it back because it was just so much of it. It was just like a free money loan. 3 years later, you find out. But anyway, we would be staying there for 3 years. We would never be complete. They have to come in and say, you're done. And then you said something. You said is what would they would tell us, or other people would tell us. Look, your music might suck. Your music might be great. But if less than 1% of the people we play this for like your music, there's 8 billion people on just this planet, right? So we don't know if there's other, we're sending rockets back out there again. We don't know how many more there are. So if less than 1% of people like your product, you're a hit. You're massive, right? So you took a risk, you know, with your idea, and that's what we all should do. And that's independence. That's, we don't have to sit around a boardroom table filled with 24 people who go, no, yes, no, and fight with people. Luckily, we're very small teams, if not a one-man team such as myself. We can make those decisions. That's my art. That's what I give to the world. That's the love I give to the world. And you've done it. I mean, I remember seeing your logo for the first time and just going, like, it just fits the case. It's so strong. You know, it's like it's chiseled Thor. You know, it was like, wow, that, you know, I mean, they nailed this. Like, whoever's doing this, you know, it looked, you know, like right, you know, it looked strong. And I mean, everything was cohesive and great. I mean, for an independent to do that back then, we all have to think back then, because you were saying the same thing. It was the birth of everything, right? You had Ariel Adams, I remember. You know, he's a great dude, man. He also, he was a purveyor of the future, man. He stepped out with a mouth. Johnny stepped out with a mouth. Same thing. We're all come from way back, you know, old school. So we can give you all a little bit of information if you're following here, collectors and young watchmakers. Pay attention, because Jørn's been around a long time, and it's easy to be a hit for 3-4 years. Remember that, people.
Oh yeah, no, I think all of us, we go through a period where we feel super hot. And I remember another person I have a lot of respect for, Felix Baumgartner, who said to me at one point, because, you know, is Urwerk hot? Well, I think in some sense it's always been, at least in my radar. I think it's fantastic what they do, and they're fantastic people also. But he said, you know, sometimes I'm worried I don't want to be hot. And I'm like, well, you know, what do you mean? Right? Because hot is not necessarily what you wish, because you sort of get too exuberant, right? And we had a period between especially 10 and 14 where it's like crazy. And I would say we didn't pay for it in 15, But in 15, when the world changed, and it was not just a little sort of blip, but it turned out to be the beginning of a very structural change that had been in the making for quite a few years. We felt very exposed because we built up this huge network of retailers around the world, and I spent plus 180 days and nights, traveling to meet clients and journalists and distributors and retailers, etc., etc. And it was not a sustainable model. And but between 10 and 15, it felt like this is just great, right? And it was great while it went on. But every brand has, our industry is super cyclical. And I think my feeling, at least coming into 21, is that it feels like we are almost past the end of a cycle. And that cycle has lasted maybe 20 years. And when we started back in discussing in 2002, 2003, there weren't that many independent watch brands around. And I remember one of them was like Frank Müller, who started in 94. And Panerai, who was or was not an independent brand. It's sort of an open-ended question. Because obviously Richmond bought them in 96, I think it was. So those were very early days in this cycle, and it was we talk about 2006 and 8 and 10 and so on. They were fantastic and creative years. You would go to Basel World and more brands and new brands and crazy stuff and fantastic stuff and all this interest in independent watchmaking, which I feel that 15, and especially in the last couple of years, there's been sort of this extreme bifurcation between two brands, maybe three, the rest of the industry, and very few independent watch brands, or down the other end almost of the spectrum. But I just have this many. Can be true or not true, right? It's like I feel that we are at the end of that cycle, and we're now coming into a new cycle. Hopefully, also because there has been a cleanup going on, which is down to kind of I'd say where we as businesses have been thinking mostly about ourselves and not so much about the customer.
I think I would say we're on our third wave, because we had the Paul Gerbers, like and the other gentlemen and geniuses that you previously mentioned. But we have the grassroots of this younger generation of watchmakers, where some of them are coming out of watchmaking school. They don't want to spend 15 years, behind a bench repairing things, or just going directly to work in a cubicle at a large company. Even though as watchmakers we have to learn, right? We have to learn a lot. It's never ending. A lot of them are really excited to just make their own timepiece, and it's viable. There is a way now. As in the beginning of this, we started off, I started to explain, because as watchmakers coming out of school, it is obtainable to find vintage machines now that were $250,000. We can find them. They're still expensive, and restore them. Like I'm doing some stuff here, so it is a viable way now. And the collectors have realized it's not some guy in a shed making a piece of crap that can't be fixed. It's the complete opposite. It's our watches are the ones that can be fixed 150 years from now, because as a restorer myself, most of my life, the watches that come across my bench, the old pocket watches, let's say, that are centuries old, a lot of those, we could say, are made by independents, because that's where they came from. They were either based on an Uni-Bosch and just built upon, and those wheels were overbuilt and they were strong, and that's the message. They got the message already. It's not the brands that you're going to get parts from, because they only have to make parts for 20 years. So we're in that. I agree with you. We're in that next cycle. It's a lovely cycle. Independence is what's it. It's kind of, if you compare it, because I'm the only one walking who can, to music and the thrash metal movement we had, right? There was only heavy metal in the early 80s. That was the only word. There wasn't subgenres and 90 kinds of genres. There was Iron Maiden, there was AC/DC, there was Black Sabbath, there was heavy metal, right? That's all there was. Until what I helped to create, us, Metallica and Slayer and Megadeth, the big four. We came out with something that no one heard it before. No one saw the embracement of comic books like it was on my guitars, like you have in your ads, right? And it was the underdog kind of mentality. But now it's transposed into the mainstream. You know, hear it on television. It's on every commercial you hear. It's go, 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 go. I mean, that comes from us, right? We used to laugh back then going, that'll be the day when our music's in it. In a commercial, you know. But that's where independent watchmaking is. That same independence, that same, you know, we can do anything we want because we make instant decisions as long as most of them are good decisions. The collector who's buying our product knows it's coming from us. It knows it's your story, Jørn. It knows your suffering, that your story is your suffering. Your business is your suffering. They get to call and talk directly to you. They get to meet you. It sucks that you were on the road 180 something days a year. I feel for you. I've been there. It's cool, but it's not.
I want to do it again. So, but I think something you can do when you're younger, right?
I did a long time out on the road as well. Around Ireland, it's a bit of a difference, but it was still, there was plenty of crap places to crash out at night, and
it's such a cool. It's just right, Johnny. It's just such a cool time to be in independent watchmaking right now.
Yeah, it is. But I wanted to pick Jørn up because Jørn, you said that we're reaching the end of a window or an era in watchmaking. How do you see it? Or do you see? Do you mean by that the dominance and the absolute dominant reign of the big guys is tapering out a little bit, in that the small brands are starting to rise above and really become part of the landscape?
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, right, and I think we all have different narratives, different stories. For me, it's more to do with the amount of watches that have been made and the amount of watches that actually ends up on customers' wrists.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for a very long time, I'm certainly not the only one who says that. It was recently said by the CEO of Hermes, Patek Philippe has said it, et cetera, is that, you know, there was a risk at least 5 years ago, and hopefully today a lot less, that there was made too many watches for too few customers, because there was this pressure on you know, pushing pieces out, which is absolutely the opposite of what we do and what we should be doing. And when we sat down in 15 and 16 and said we have to think differently about, you know, how we do. We can't just run, and the only thing we worry about is getting the next piece and the next piece and the next piece. We have to turn it around and think about our own businesses. What if we never sell another new watch? How does that work for us? How would that work sort of in the sort of whole scheme of things? And just to come back to that, so I think there's been a period where it became more and more evident that there were too many watches, because suddenly pre-owned became the dominant factor. And when I was a child or young, right, I mean, buying a pre-owned watch was not cool, right? It was a bit sort of, really, is that because you can't afford a new one? But these days, it's clever, right? It decides the power of brands. It decides, you know, the pricing of watches, etc., etc. And at least, you know, between 5 and 10 years ago, when this started happening, I don't think anybody foresaw how powerful an impact it would have on the industry and the market and the interest of collectors. Mm-hmm. So I think in one sense, it is very positive, right? Because it allows people to buy and sell much easier. So it becomes much more liquid. But it also puts a lot of responsibility on brands to make sure that we make exactly one less watch than is desired, and also that we facilitate the pre-owned market. which we started doing back in May 16. We were the first ones to do it, and happily, to see that other people are doing it too. Because I think that's really important for us to understand what our customers want. And for one thing, when I think back, to the fairs and to be almost at the behest of retailers and also journalists, what's new? What's new? What are you doing this year? What material? What movement? What application? And then when you go back and speak directly to the customer only, then you realize that actually the customer is not looking for news all the time. The customer needs to have time to kind of contemplate, do they really like what you do and why, etc., etc. And they don't need to sort of, click, because otherwise I'll be too late because next week it will be something else. And this strategy works for some people, I'm sure, but I think for us, we just want to say, listen, it's we do it at our own pace, and we do it at our pace where we kind of feel that our customers are going, if they sometimes they ask more for us, then we do more, and sometimes less, then we do less. So it becomes sort of a quite sort of organic, where we I wouldn't say we just try to fit in, but we try and read what's going on instead of pushing a business plan or an ambition through and say, oh, next year we got to do this, and next year we got to do that. I mean, listen, we sat in 19 and we heard about a virus in China, and here we sit a year and a half later, and the world looks completely different, right? I mean, could anybody foresee that? Absolutely not, right?
No. And look, if I would have foreseen, like what you said, that this vintage market of timepieces that I come across my bench all day long, if I wasn't, doing Patek restorations, all those Omega Speedmasters that were like $750, and I'm fixing them up for the guy, beautiful watches back then, going, oh man, I should probably pop one of those for myself too, just to have, if we could have foresaw that. I mean, I didn't, and I was deep in it, and now it's just a beautiful thing. And it comes back around because the collectors are seeing that the watches that were built like a brick shithouse back then, like those watches where they were overbuilt, okay? Like I built my watches, they're overbuilt, like a Roger W. Smith built stuff, thicker, everything is bigger, better, and anybody can fix it later on that's traditionally trained. Those watches are like that, a lot of them are like that. Those are the ones that are still around. Those are the ones that went through 12 to 20 hack watchmakers, or they called themselves watchmakers back then, but they're literally hacking away when I get them. I mean, there's hack marks everywhere. I mean, just destroyed, but somehow they still tick. Those are the ones that are still around. They're in good condition. They can be restored, and it brought this resurgence, right? A whole nother market. And you're right, man. It's brought an awareness, and your branding stayed the same. What you have. It still represents what the day you started, the dream. It's still there. Your pulse is still there. You can bob and weave as an independent swiftly. It doesn't take you 3 years to do something. And that's what's cool about independence. And that's how you've been here so long. And man, you definitely got your pulse like right on it. It's really cool to listen to.
So speaking of the origins of Linde Werdelin, because you're an avid skier and extreme sports, that's kind of the mountaineering, rock climbing. Morton was more into the scuba, I think, and but between that, you come back. You see there. Whenever you're talking about the reduction of watch manufacturing to units and to mere units, as opposed to there being any emotive connection or emotional connection with the watch. So your watches came from a passion for this great outdoor.
Absolutely. It was basically we came up with this idea about mechanical timepieces with digital instruments that we could attach, and it came from me going skiing, heli skiing in Canada, and I had a reverso on, and I needed to leave it somewhere when I went out skiing and put on my digital so-and-so. And I could lock the door because it was like a large and every, sort of very, Canadian American. And then Morten, he had done a watch for George Denson. That's it. Where you could change the outer case. So we had this idea that Morten had already been working on about changing the kind of the perception or the usage of your timepiece. And obviously other brands have combined electronics and mechanical before, but we felt that's not the optimal solution. So we came up with this idea, you have the mechanical timepiece, and only when you need it can you attach an instrument either for mountaineering or for the ski. And it was because, as you said, actually both Morten and I still are, avid mountaineers, skiers. Unfortunately, this year it's the first year in more than 30 years that I haven't been able to get to the mountains. Mm-hmm. But so be it. So absolutely, and I think that's really important also that you can't just take a watch down to its component, and it shouldn't be, and also the the name of the brand should not be boiled down into profit centers and maximizing this and maximizing that. I think if you do that, you will probably end up on the wrong side. It is about really liking, loving, and respecting what we do. And I've personally gone through some ups and downs, as you will in anything you do in life.
Yeah.
And I was with someone in Lisbon the other day who used to work in the Swiss watch industry, and actually comes from a Swiss family. He's half Swiss. And we were talking about it. We were talking about a lot of other things during lunch, and I said to him, and I mean it's like now is probably the time where I have kind of the most enjoyment and the most respect for what we do and how we do it, and I have the most interest in what we do because I don't feel under pressure to perform. Right? We need to do stuff, and we're doing it. But that because we allow ourselves, and it's not because you say, oh, but that's because you're successful, because I wouldn't sort of put it into that category. But it's like many things in life. When you grow a little bit older, you realize that it is what it is, and you have to enjoy it. What it lasts.
What are you chasing, right? I mean, I've been there. I've been there in music. You can there's a lot of things that people dream for. I wish I had this. I wish I had that. I wish I had this. And when lots of it is obtainable, sometimes your life starts to align a lot more, and you realize what's really important. I know we're kind of getting deep here, but
absolutely. But I think also it is age. I mean, I'm a different person from I was when I was 36 or 26 or 46, right? Or and I mean, hopefully, right? Because you're moving through life, right? And we need to sit here and be different from our sons, and be able to give them some sort of advice on what it is like being their age and maybe later, right? And whether you need to run or walk.
Well, what me and Johnny have found fascinating, talking to so many people and so many different stories, a lot of them behind the scenes are similar. What we found fascinating is during the pandemic, when normal brands would suffer of most commodities, let's say even in luxury goods, independent watchmaking did the opposite. It was thriving, exploding, because a lot of us really don't travel. We're watchmakers who are working from home, and we sell direct. Our boutique is Instagram, right? We don't need brick and mortar if we don't want it. So that's also a cool aspect of independent watchmaking, right? It's finally branched out where we can look inside a Japanese guy's window and watch him, make a nameplate, an old-fashioned way or a new-fashioned way. There's so many different aspects. There's no right and there's no wrong. It's just micro-mechanical art now. And we each get to represent ourselves as humans. And that's what's different from when you started. Whereas you saw that, you saw a little bit of what was coming and you grabbed hold of it. But now you 20 years later get to look in and see that people love to watch other people. It's just like people love to watch when I used to play on stage. They can't touch me. They tried to, when they were slam dancing, they would get hurled on stage and maybe someone could get close because it was a different kind of music, right? We did the opposite though. See, we embraced them. If they made it on stage, we figured, you're a damn fine human. Like, how the hell did you get up here? So you get to stay up here, stand by my roadie over there, be a cool dude. If not, we're gonna hurl you right back in the audience. Or if you want to be hurled, it wasn't to get 9 bodyguards and kill the guy and throw him out of the arena. It was we're human, we're normal, they're human, and that's it transposes into independent watchmaking as well. Everyone gets to see inside our workshops now, in what we do. If you don't embrace that, even if you're not, direct to the watchmaker, but you're direct to the inventor, whatever that independent brand is and represents for that person, his passion, what he did. Maybe he didn't have time to go to watchmaking school. He started his dream and quit his old job when he's 42 years old and said, I'm going for it. I'm going to make cases and dials, and this is my art. This is what I represent. Now everyone can come into your life and feel your pain, feel your struggles. And you started telling us a little about there was ups and downs in my life a little bit here. We all have them, okay? Some worse than others, some just different worse than others, right?
Yeah.
And that's the cool part. I feel that's the cool part of the connection between our collectors with us as independents, and how it differs from a brand. A big brand, they can try to grasp straws and try to mimic what we are, but in reality, they're just a pop star. It's fake. And if you can't see through it, you're an idiot, Come to our side, and it's reality. You're feeling our humanness. You're watching someone like me restore a machine 100 and some odd years ago. My blood is in that machine. Now that machine is going to make one of my parts. So that's my story. That's what I like to do, right? And then you have your story of your brand, and there's a reason for longevity. And I'll keep saying it. Whoever's listening, listen closely, because longevity is the key. It's not that flash in the pan is pop music. You can have a hit. They used to tell us the same thing you said earlier. You can have the hit, man, and it comes instantly. Oh, Felix Baumgartner said, right? That's the opposite of what we wanted in thrash metal. In fact, we told them we don't even want to be on MTV. I don't even want to make a video because that could ruin everything. It comes too fast, too hard, and then it's gone. It's better to just be a little turtle snailing along and bobbing and weaving and just moving along, man.
Well, listen, you're speaking of longevity, and I want to go back to the watches, because really and truly, I thought that Linde Werdelin, aside from the marketing, aside from the cool graphic novels, the bande dessinées, you were disruptors. And again, with the shape of your watches, the design of your watches too. And I know the Bioformator Elemental is not the original watch, but it is a tribute to your original watch, I think.
Yeah. No, that is the original watch.
That is the original. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was the watch we made in 2006. Then in 2016 we relaunched the 3-timer, which is the same case, different bezel, and a GMT.
Yeah, I think is that the 3-timer.
From that developed into the two families, Octopus and Spyro family. One going up and the other one going down, and the construction of those two cases are made simply from anti-gravity. How do we make this watch as light as possible so that it's no hindrance when you go up? And the other is when you go down into the sea, what do you need? Well, you need anti-corrosiveness. So we only work with materials for the octopus family that are highly anti-corrosive. And then also the idea of a central unit, which is like a dive bell that carries life deep into sea. And obviously here the movement is the life of the octopus.
Okay, so that's so. This is where to start. My point was that we were touching on longevity there. The DNA of Linde Werdelin, their design DNA is, as I say, it's unmistakable from 100 paces. It is instantly recognizable, and I think it was really for one of for an independent brand. It was a real departure from classic styling. And but also I love the fact that it was designed to be coupled with the rock or the reef, the computers that went along with it. But as the brand evolved, that design ethos, even though the reef and the rock may now be outdated, I imagine, software, etc., and also advances in other technology that have kind of made those redundant. But the design ethos, the design language of Linde Werdelin has continued on through right up to the latest piece, and which I think the latest was Octopus Blue Sea with that.
So the Blue Sea, we did it in collaboration with James Taunton, Aka Black Matcher. So we wanted to do this piece where you look deep into the sea, so that the different layers of the dial is different colors of blue. But we also the other important thing about this watch is we wanted it to look as good in daylight as cool as it does when it's fully loomed. And that we had to work a lot with new technologies, and it took us some time to. It actually took more than 2 years from beginning to completion, and that's is only work with the dial, because the case itself, is ALW, which we had worked with before.
Alloy Linde Werdelin.
Yeah, which is it's a very light and actually works super well with this piece, because it has sort of that very similar sort of milky color that the dial also has when it's not loomed. I have to say, personally, I love the piece, and I love wearing it.
This is actually, there are 5 if anybody's listening and not watching, there are 5 images across the screen at the minute of the
sort of different stages of loom, right?
Different stages of loom, all the same watch, with the loom that is affected by the degree of darkness. And as you say, you're working with the mighty James Thompson of Black Badger, who's a sorcerer of luminosity. And he worked on this amazing. Hang on, and you got to
wearing. I'm wearing another piece here, which we did with Johnny Dow.
The Octopus Volcano.
That's exactly. And so we've worked with these 2, artists, as I would call them, on very specific parts of the watch. And I think it is that, some people view watchmaking as only the movement, and the rest is really of no importance. But we think it's more of a whole experience, and it is to very large extent what is on the inside and why, and how do you read time and what do you read. But it's certainly also the kind of symbiosis between the movement and the case, and the idea behind the whole thing. And why does our case look like this? Well, it's because it was made in that shape to be able to attach digital instruments to go mountaineering and to go diving. And you said that our case DNA stays the same, and I think that's really important. And it's very important for us also that when we look back at pieces that we made more than 10 years ago or 15 years ago, that we are still proud of that, and that we think that the making of that watch is is good. Obviously, there's constantly an evolution going on. And I would say at the beginning of our first 10 years, we had several revolutions where we changed the way that we were thinking because we were learning. So when we started out, we thought we knew a lot, but we knew absolutely less than zero. Then probably after 10 years, we started knowing what we didn't know, so to speak.
Yeah.
So you're beginning to get a little bit more comfortable in your shoes, and you kind of know, what you, the answers to the questions also. And now when I look at what we do, and we actually just at this moment, working with one of our cases a little bit, and sort of slight adjustments to some things that we, after years, I felt, well, maybe this could, do with a little bit of, a little bit of evolution, a little bit of change. But I think it is important for people that bought our pieces 5, 10, 15 years ago, that they know that we still love those watches, and we're not at all ever embarrassed. I remember a brand some years ago made some pretty wild pieces, and personally I didn't agree with them, and then suddenly it changed back to something very classic, and it must feel very awkward for a customer who has just bought the piece, and then I buy it on the Friday, and then on Monday they say, no, forget about that, we are going back to something completely different.
No, I think what I said in the beginning is what you made an impact on me way back then with the shape and everything, and it stood the test of time till today. It was way ahead of its time. Everything, the band, the shape, the way it went around, just around your wrist, just everything, and it's still right on the money today. Which means you nailed it out of the gate. That's the hardest thing to do. Some people it is an evolution. You said it's evolution of little things. That means you got a lot of it right in the beginning, and that's a wonderful feeling to have inside, to know that that hard work in the very beginning, when you took that giant leap of faith, really did pay off. And because it was very experimental for you back then, big time.
Yeah. No, I mean, that case, you would not be able to make that case 30 years ago, right? I mean, that requires computer programming, CAD, CNC machines, extreme precision, and I'm not saying that can't be handmade, but it with the case making, so the outer case, how strong is that compared to how light it is. So on that we have, for every material that we work with, it's executed slightly differently because of the structure of the material.
One of my absolute favorites, we're talking here about the Spido Speed Titanium, the Linde Werdelin chronograph, and as Dan was saying, that it was the design of these cases was, well, for me, it was futuristic. It was like nothing else, and it really, it's one of those watches that really, if you don't know independent watches and you see this, what you're going to know about it afterwards, because it leaves an impression. It leaves.
I think it divides, right? Some people say, that's a costly piece, right? And but that's what it is, right? I mean, if you make something that everybody kind of likes, then you have made nothing. But if you make something that some people love and some people hate, that's cool.
That's it.
Right?
That's what we try. That's what we try to tell the young artists, young watchmakers, young whatever it is. We all have our own taste, right?
You got to have a point of view.
Yeah.
Right? And so and early on, I saw a good friend of mine, Christian Hagen. I'm actually going to see a bit later today. But he posted some of his Linde Werdelin in a box, and luckily most of the comments were very positive, but one wrote ugly, ugliest, and it's okay, right? I mean, it's not for everybody, and if you don't like it, that's fine, right? And if you comment about it, that's cool too, right?
That's
what can I say?
That's what's cool about all art, I mean, we don't drive the same car, right? We all don't like the same food. We don't. We're independent humans, and that's what's really, really, really cool about independent watchmaking. Because right now, in its new wave, it's vast. You know, you can find this, you can find that, you can find your guy, and then move on from there and understand. And what's really also really cool about this next surge is you could come visit us. You know, it's not to put on your white gloves and your white hat and come in and get vacuumed off. You know, usually you're coming to someone's house or a part of their home or near their home or a small little place where things are done. And you can hang with us. You can have dinner with us. And it becomes a whole different experience that big brands just can't give you. It really is, again, our humanness, right?
But again, so if you appeal to 0.01% of the population, i.e. 1 in 10,000 people, you will never be able to supply them all. If you had 5 lifetimes, you would not be able.
No,
right. But what I said,
0.1% likes what we do.
But what that dude had told me and told us and so many of my friends to understand, so it didn't hurt us as musicians, was if the rest hate your stuff, I mean despise it, like they told us when we went to go get record deals, and us and Metallica and everyone, they said our music sounded like when you flush the toilet, dude, that's what it sounds like. Get out of my fucking office. You know, I mean, if they hate you that much, that's great. That's amazing. Because the other people are gonna love your stuff.
That's
so much.
Commitment, isn't it? That's commitment.
Yeah.
A belief, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's.
I mean, in difference than a stone face is like that. That's almost the worst insult, right?
Yeah. Fantastic. Oh man, so there were other pieces that we wanted to take a look at as well, and because obviously you were also an experimenter of, as you say, of materials. You mentioned ALW there, which is alloy. Linde Werdelin, which is your own proprietary alloy, which you use because it's light, it's durable, it's perfect for coping with the rugged environment of mountain climbing, heli skiing, ordinary skiing for mere mortals, and scuba, etc. So, but one of them was the use of forged carbon, which was I think that was, is this forged carbon?
No, so we did some pieces with forged carbon. No, this is called 3DTP.
3DTP.
And it's 3-dimensional thin ply, and it's layers of carbon. And it's some guys in Switzerland that experiment for many years with carbon. And I think one of the things that when we started out, we did some pieces where the whole case was in DLC. The problem about DLC is that if you've got edges, it will wear off over edges over time because it is a surface treatment and it cannot be any other way. And we wanted to do a black case through and through, and obviously it's striped, but it's still black. And so that came, from that came the 3DTP out, and it's a great material. It's super light. The outer case of a Spidrolite 3DTP weighs 3.8 grams, and actually the Spidrolite of this version is our lightest watch, and I think it is 62 grams.
Is that it?
Yes, it will. No, that's actually forged carbon. So and that's sort of a it's a different series. I mean, for me, the 3DTP type of carbon is so structural and so architectural also, and I really love the way that I guess especially how the octopus case looks, because you can see every angle on it, right? You kind of see the strength of it, and then it makes it such a light watch. And you combine that with the tin treatments, both in the movement and on the screws. Great.
Yeah, looks great.
I mean, it's a little bit awkward for me to sit here, sort of, But there are obviously some pieces that we do that I, over time, kind of, prefer more than others, and it also changes. And maybe it's what I wear that. Some periods I wear a lot of the Spyro, and then I go a little bit more into the octopus, and sometimes I go back and I wear like a 3-timer Nord with, the Fumier dial, which was a kind of an odd and really positive experience for us, because I think the Fumier dial is a very classic way, and I was really surprised that it worked so well in a 3-timer. And for me, it's definitely something to do more with. It just makes a very nice, beautiful dial, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't be trusted. I'm biased, so I can't be trusted.
So am I. So am I. Biased in your favor.
And explain to the people where your workshops are, where they started, where your workshops are now, and manufacturing, and so on and so forth.
So we work in the very traditional way, in that we have about 25 partners, predominantly in Switzerland, 1 or 2 in Italy. Actually, that's straps. So I think for the watch itself, it's entirely made in Switzerland, and we have people or factories. For movements, we work with 3-4 different factories. We work with different factories depending on what material the case is. ALW is one factory, the same factory. That's one factory. Then do like titanium grade 2, grade 5 in another factory. They also do gold, but that's in another factory because it's another type of machine with another type of filtering because of the value of gold. Ceramic is made in another place. The hands are made in one factory because some of the hands, the blue hands, have to be hand finished. You know that when they kind of sit and they wait for the right color blue to come off the plate, the hand comes off. So many different factories. One factory, they only make our crowns because they have machines that's sorry to use the language, but spit out crowns and screws and kind of the small parts that all our screws. Whoops.
Let's have a look.
Find the camera. Yeah. So you look at the screws, right? All our screws are titanium grade 5 because that's also what the inserts of the strap is. So they're obviously made by one factory. So as I said, we probably have about 25 partners, sort of spread nicely around Chaux de Fonds, Le Locle, and then the watches are assembled in Le Locle by our partner there, who also works on the modification of movements. As you both know, it's very. Oops, I think my children are coming home now, so let me just walk. Yeah,
that's okay. We are on the move, and
can you see me? Let's see here.
We can, perfectly.
So okay, let me sit
I
down
think it's somebody in your house celebrating a birthday this evening, Jørn. If you could,
it's my wife's birthday, so I promised her that we will go out for dinner and not too long. So here we are. So I think
our best wishes.
The way that we do our watches is a very very traditional way of Swiss watchmaking. So.
All good.
So and that, I think that goes into a whole different discussion about in-house watchmaking, which is such a kind of conundrum and a very odd discussion to have, because we make very limited amount of pieces, and also at what I would say is not a crazy amount of money. We're talking between 5 and 25,000 pounds per piece, and obviously that is a lot of money for most people. But if we are talking about independent limited watchmaking, that to combine that with in-house movement is impossible. And then also the question is it really that important to say that you have made the movement yourself? Then what about the case? What about the hands? And what about the dials? And what about the this and the that side? It's and much rather like to say that it's a combination of a lot of artisans and a lot of factories that have 30 years of experience or more, maybe even 100 years of experience in what they do. And
I think what I tried to state earlier is independent watchmaking is open to many different facets of somebody's art/dream.
Totally.
Yeah.
If someone didn't have the time to go to school and then do the 20 some odd years of apprenticeships thereafter and go to another school and all that, but they still have that passion enough to quit their former career. And we've heard the story before and people tell it on here.
Yeah.
That's their story. That's your story of independence. You didn't take the money from the guy with the cigar. You pulled it off. It's your dream. So that's your story. If people believe in your story, your dream, and your timepiece is a representation of you. It's not a brand. It is a brand, but it's not a brand. It's your independence. It's your story, and it's your walking story. So there should be no explanation of anything except this is me. This is what my product is. It's just really an extension of my arm to you. And that's what it is. So if someone is, your story is you somehow can balance 25 different companies to create one piece and have it all funnel and come together, that would be a nightmare for me. That's not my story. I couldn't deal with that, right? So that's my story is, I can't deal with that. So I'm going to go about it a different way. That's what's cool about independent watchmaking. There is no right way. There is no wrong way. I mean, I'll sit here. Somebody comes up. It's not handmade. What do you got? Handmade on your dial, buddy. And what's handmade? We can get into that discussion. Are you using a pantograph machine? You got a pantograph machine? It's not handmade. Because that's just an old school CNC machine. You're copying something. I mean, we can go all the way down the line. Are you using a light bulb?
Absolutely.
It's not handmade anymore because back then they didn't have light. You know what I mean? I mean, we can go down that rabbit hole forever, man. It's not.
And at the end of the day, what happens sometimes when I hear from someone who is maybe contemplating buying one of our pieces, and you can kind of feel that from the conversation they're having with one of our, or our team, is that, no, you know what, they're not going to buy it because there are too many questions where they kind of want to nail us. And then I say, just let it go, right? So, people don't need to buy it. And if they've got sort of opinions, about things that, that's how we do it. And, it's not for them. Well, then go somewhere else, right?
Yeah, so, I mean, right, Johnny, in-house, I take it to another level. If it's not in your house, it's not in-house. If it's in a factory with 75, this is in my house. I have a complete manufacturing facility. It's in my house. So
that is in-house.
I won't even use that term. I think it's freaking played out and bogus and pop music bullshit anyway. But listen, if you really want to push me, buddy, is it in your freaking house? Because if it's not, it ain't in-house.
It's another one of those cliches that are.
Yeah, it's already old.
Someone comes out with it and says, the watch is made in-house, and that's fantastic. And
that's 20 years ago, right?
More and more people are using that same expression until it is absolutely everywhere. It's omnipresent, and and the more common it is, the less value it has.
Right.
That it is.
It's played.
Yeah,
it's like, again, in music. If I create a riff and it's never been heard before, and it's got a unique sound, and you can't get it out of your head the second I play it, the second you hear it on one of my albums, and then 17 other bands copy my riff and skew it a little bit, and 15 years later, it's all played out. Like, be the inventor, come up with a new term. Right?
Hey, speaking of music, man.
Huh?
Speaking of music.
Oh yeah. Let's we ask all our guests, because we are a combination of watchmaking and music here, and I'm this unique character within this watchmaking world who has a unique history. We'd like to ask people what music they listen to, what music they grew up on, in your workshops or in your offices where you're putting everything together in those 25 brands and all those headaches and yelling and screaming. Are you listening to music? So fill us in with what makes you either explode or calm down.
In terms of music, what do you listen to, Jørn? What is your taste?
Well, I am currently listening to a Brazilian lady called Gabriella. Oh, I can't remember her surname. But my favorite tune right now is called Vibração, and I guess it's Brazilian Portuguese.
Sort of bossa nova type thing, or
yeah, a bit, yeah.
And what kind of music did you grow up on? Because I used to play Denmark all the time, but were you slam dancing there?
I was really sort of Dave Grusin, Lee Rittenauer, David Sanborn, that type of which was sort of late vinyl, just before the CDs came around, and a bit of Donald Fagen thrown in.
Oh, there we go.
But I mean, right back in the day, it was like Sweet and Slade, and that's a long, long time ago.
Good, Steely Dan, one of my favorites.
Donald Fagen, not that Nightfly. What an album! Like do. So I'm playing the keyboard.
That's all right. I was a Steely Dan freak. It's really funny because people think I always listen to the music that I created, but no.
So you'd be Larry Carlton then, yeah?
Yeah, Al Di Meola, Larry Carlton,
yeah, cool.
Stanley Clark,
also,
Sheila Ponte.
Oh, but the list goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
I mean, music.
So does music play a big part in your life today? Then is it something that do you chill out with music, or is?
Yeah. But
I do. I've cut off.
Yeah, I don't listen to it all the time. But I've got young children, so I've got enough noise. Daytime.
You should have. Yeah, it'll come back. The opportunity will return.
Sometimes with a peace and quiet is good.
Yeah. So I dropped it. I disconnected from all news and media and out there. I get enough news. I know what's going on, but for the rest of the time, I just have music from morning to night, and So if I listened to a lot of Brazilian influenced music over the last few days as well, and because the song was out for a few minutes earlier on in the week, so it put me in the
I'll send you a link both to Gabriella, so then you can hear.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, Dan, we're going to have to create a playlist on Spotify for In the Metal for all our guests.
It's actually a really good idea. All the music that each one of our guests has listens to.
Yeah, we'll have to do that. We'll have to do that. Absolutely.
Watchmaker music channel.
Yeah. I know it's your wife's birthday this evening, and they're back. You've promised to take her out for dinner, so I think it's been really good of her to allow you to spend this time.
It's going to cost me.
Huh?
It's going to cost me.
No, but that's fine. That's all right.
So, Kronos, there's a question. If Kronos just asked us a question, if you come back to us next time, Kronos, because we have another independent watchmaker in a couple of weeks' time. But for now, I think it's a good time, because I don't want to get in trouble with Mrs. Werdelin for keeping you away from the restaurant, and and there's Martin in Philadelphia, I believe, saying, "Hi,
Martin. I hope
you're well." So,
long time no see.
Absolutely. Catch up on this one, Martin. It was good fun. So,
well, thank you so much, both of you.
We appreciate your valuable time, big time.
No. And likewise. And I think we could continue this conversation for a couple of more hours, right?
Yeah. That's what's cool. Like I said, we talk to people who give insight to others and leave this historical stamp wherever we can, be it through podcasts or YouTube, for future reference. That's what this is really for. So we appreciate your love that you're giving back to the world, both in your art, your creation, how you stepped out in the beginning and just took that risk. And that's really what it's all about, to be an entrepreneur, a risk taker, an artist, a creator, and making it happen. And to have longevity that you had, there's very few out there that can talk back to us all who think we're little wise asses, but we're not. It's all about that longevity, people. It's not about 3 years. It's not about 5 years. It's not how many you could sell that first year, taking all that money and reinvest in it, because you don't want to sink in that quicksand there and try to get out and then take a life preserver. listen to Jørn. He's got some really, he has some really interesting stories to tell you, and he has a huge future ahead for what he does.
Really.
20 years from now, he'll still be here, and we might not be. So
yeah, well, here, fingers crossed.
Probably because he's taking his wife to dinner though now.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent.
So listen, thank you so much for being a wonderful guest tonight. As you said, we could go on for hours, and in a way, that's a little bit like what In the Metal is like. It's like sitting around a table, as we say in Ireland here. It's like sitting around the high table, having a bit of chat among a few friends, and we love that banter, that sort of informal, free-flowing, organic sense that there is to it. Jørn, we hopefully will be here for a while as well, so we'd love to have you back again, in another year or two, to see what's happened then, and to keep the story relevant and see what's going on. So, for everybody who has been watching us tonight, thank you once again for your support. Thank you for watching us. Tell your friends and get them to tune in anytime that we're on. We'll be sharing our content on Instagram, Facebook. It's always there on YouTube. It's always there on our website. And we'll be back again, possibly next week, if not the week after. And we will see you then. Jørn, hold on for one moment, and that's it. You want to say goodbye, Dan?
Thank you. Goodbye,
Later, everybody.
Thank you so much for your time. Have a good weekend when it counts.
Super.